Good evening. Assalamu alaikum rahmatullahi wa barakatuh and welcome to News in Focus. My name is Faraz Fatah. We'd like to thank you, the viewer, for staying with us on Hilaal TV, DSTV channel 347. Of course, as we build up to the Global Sumud Flotilla making its way to Gaza to break the illegal Israeli siege, a group of 108 elected representatives and parliamentarians worldwide signed an urgent statement demanding governments immediately open a humanitarian corridor into Gaza and guarantee protection for the Sumud Flotilla, now sailing in an attempt to breach that very same blockade. Government and international institutions were urged to ensure that the flotilla's mission is quote-unquote neither obstructed nor endangered. The statement stressed that the initiative is a legal initiative and therefore cannot be attacked or stopped. Joining me now from the legal support team, she is no stranger to us here at Hilaal TV. It's none other than Bluen. Joe, always good having you on. Thank you so much for joining us.
Greetings to you and salam alaikum to all your viewers at home. Thanks for having us.
No, absolute pleasure. Walaikum salam. Joe, listening to Dr. Francesca Albanese yesterday when she mentioned the word legal, I know we sometimes throw that word around, but in the context of this, talk to us about why this had to be stressed, the word legal, with regards to this very same flotilla.
I think it's such a great question, and I think there's a couple of points there. And the first is that we know at first, from first base, as we've been seeing, that for the most part, the Zionist entity doesn't really respect international law very much. So things like bombing hospitals or withholding aid or committing genocide are all violations of serious international laws, as you'll know. Having said that, I think what is clear is that if the flotilla is intercepted, for example, or if, as our unit is tasked with monitoring the use of drones, or, we are going to see that any of these actions by the Israeli state would amount to a breach of international law, and in some cases a gross violation. And I think that's very important because one of the things that the state is trying to do is to attempt to delegitimize this kind of very courageous act by activists, by ordinary people, by everyone from kind of your quite militant activists to your aunties who care about humanity, to any number of beautiful people that are here to do this thing. Ben-Gvir just called them terrorists, just called everyone on the flotilla terrorists. So in that context, we need to say that what is illegal is the blockade on Gaza. What is illegal is the settler colonial siege. The people that are trying to intercept that siege, to breach that siege, those are the ones that are acting legally. And those are the ones that are not only acting legally, but are carrying out their moral and political responsibility to the people of Palestine and for all of us.
Yeah. So here's the thing, I've been speaking to a lot of the South Africans that are going to be obviously participating in this flotilla, and what they've been undergoing training was drone training. And I think we need to look at that as a possibility. You've mentioned it. This is Israel we're talking about, complete rejection of international law. But by that, I mean, from the legal standing, how important was it for those passengers on the flotilla to understand what might happen, but also at the same time understanding their legal rights as part of this mission?
I think it's also such a great question. And I think so one of our tasks, I'm with the legal support boat, and one of our tasks will be to monitor all drone surveillance and to work with the members of the participants on the flotilla to monitor those. And we have already seen, even in the short time that the boats have been out, there have already been drones out there, and that is quite common. So it's very, very important. And I think I think that there is a level of fear-mongering that is being done by the Israeli state of kind of I don't know if it's its capacities or its potential bite. And so under those circumstances, I think that training is imperative, both because I think that, we can say, and it's absolutely true, that people are taking great risks to do this, and it's deeply important. And obviously it's in many ways quite scary. I mean, we're not going up to actually break the siege. We'll go with our boat is going until the end, the interception point, not the point of breach. But, to be cautious around that, to be aware of what's going on is deeply important. And the Israeli state will do what it will do. But to be aware of how to handle things like de-escalation, that kind of thing is essential. But I think I just want to say again, as I'm very grateful that you have said, that what is happening today is in this Global Sumud Flotilla absolutely happens under the auspices of international law and is absolutely legal.
UN Special Rapporteur on the Middle East, Dr. Francesca Albanese, you were part this week of a panel discussion, of course, just understanding the legal protection that the passengers will undergo. Just having her on board, what was there that needed to be taken so that the passengers understand their legal rights within this, given this is somebody who's, of course, documented the war crimes that are not just happening in Gaza, but also that of the occupied West Bank?
So I think there's a few things. Number one, it was so important for Dr. Albanese to have made that point, because, as you say, her voice carries a great degree of weight. I would like to also say on that note, there were, I don't know, several, maybe a dozen or 20 odd top international law experts, all of whom approach this from different angles, be it international humanitarian law, maritime law. We had one person speaking about the responsibility to protect, which we usually associate with states, which she said, and it was such a compelling argument, that these are individuals of conscience exercising their collective responsibility to protect that is owed to the people of Palestine. We had international criminal lawyers. We had so any number of branches of international law will come to the same conclusion, and I think that's key. So yes, it's Dr. Francesca Albanese's voice, and that lends so much, and she is just a remarkable, she has taken that role and really gone over and above what can be expected within the purview of a role, and done so well. And joining that was a chorus of voices from everywhere, Turkey, from Europe, from North America, from South Africa. We had so many people that came that have studied this for decades, that have worked in this for decades, that have all, it's almost silly to have to say this, because it's so self-evident that you are traveling in a boat in the sea towards an illegal blockade with a view to taking protest action against an illegal entity. Of course, it's not illegal. But of course, because we know that entity insists on behaving in breach of the law and insists on manipulating the truth, as we know, it is necessary to keep reiterating that. And I certainly would say, I was there for the whole day yesterday. There's a legal memorandum that's been presented, and there is a universal consensus amongst people who are experts on this, that this is absolutely legal. What that means in terms of how Israel will act, we cannot know, and that's why our legal support board is there, to provide support in the event of that. But the legality is without question.
Well, after the break, my conversation with Joe Bluen continues, because we're going to be discussing the role of nation states as this Global Sumud Flotilla happens. This comes as Itamar Ben-Gvir, Israel's national security minister, has said he has a plan to intercept the flotillas and detain activists under harsh conditions. No surprise in that statement there. We'll be back after this break. Welcome back to News in Focus. I'm still in conversation with Joe Bluen. She's part of the legal team representing the Global Sumud Flotilla. Again, Joe, always good having you on. Joe, Itamar Ben-Gvir, he's unveiled a plan where he says he would like to intercept the flotilla and detain activists under harsh conditions. Again, you and I know quite well that this should not come as a surprise. Now, in the event, God forbid, this does happen, where does the legal protection for the passengers come, especially when it comes to nation states?
So I think that's a very important question, and it's crucial. And I think, number one, what we do need to understand is what is being carried out here. We don't know where this will go yet, but and that is part of our role, is not necessarily to be the lawyers on the ground, but there are legal teams that are prepped and ready to support our activists in the event of their being unlawfully detained, or any kind of detention, right? So that's, I mean, any detention would be unlawful, to be very clear. So that, I think, is the one point. These activists are nonviolent, taking nonviolent direct action to breach a siege, and also, I mean, I think it's worth bearing in mind how we think about violence in the context of a settler colonial genocidal state that owns the monopoly on violence, and that has used unbelievable violence on civilians and combatants as well. So I think that's the first point. I think what we're seeing in this kind of escalation language, and it's something that I've been thinking about quite a lot since Ben-Gvir said, when he said, these are terrorists, is that this is part of an Israeli Hasbara playbook. And it is part of an ongoing campaign where, and we know this very well, if you can say someone is a terrorist, or and I'm very sad to say it, or sometimes if you can say someone is a Muslim, for example, which is often conflated in the context of the Zionist entity, then you can begin to say that attacks or any violence against this person is justified. So, it's not that similar to what we're seeing in the UK, where you're seeing grannies being arrested for being Palestine Action because they're terrorists. So this is the danger of prescription and the danger of our language. So that's the first point. And I think, so to be very clear, there is a large team of lawyers that will be in support on the ground in so-called Israel. And I think it is incumbent upon states, in the event that their citizens or any people really are detained, to take action. The most intense diplomatic action and other forms of action to make sure that their citizens are not detained unlawfully, illegally in a foreign settler colony. I mean, that is absurd. And I think what I would like to say, coming to this is our activists are taking tremendous risks, and we are, very, very conscious of the deep moral weight that this holds. And I always say, I was chatting to someone who was saying, all eyes on the flotilla. And of course, all eyes on the flotilla. That's my job. But also all eyes on Gaza, all eyes on Palestine, because this is also part of, being designated as a terrorist, being proscribed, being incarcerated. That is the bread and butter. That is the life force of the genocidal ongoing Nakba in Palestine. So I think at each stage it's very important for us to be aware of that, but also for states to be aware, and unfortunately for states that are supportive, like South Africa, to be aware that responsibility really, it's if we are saying that we are, in our millions and our billions, we are all Palestinians, and we are seeing these people, regardless of nationality, regardless of citizenship, kind of trailing on in to breach this vile siege that has turned Gaza into a concentration camp, then the action that is going to be required by states that are supportive, in absentia possibly of anything from the genocidally complicit West, is going to demand that it is a bigger action, and hopefully that also will translate into support for incarcerated Palestinians, because the detainees, the hostages, we might say, from children to any number of things. It's just the political prisoners in Palestine situation is appalling. So I think it's going to require urgent action. It's going to require urgent preparation by states to be thinking ahead to that, and also from our side, from the flotilla side, coordination with our exemplary legal team in Palestine.
Yeah, that's what I want to get to, Joe, because the role of nation states within the context of this Global Sumud Flotilla, how important is it for them to be aware that the potential detaining, that those words from Itamar Ben-Gvir are taken seriously by the nation states, because this is Israel we are talking about, and any opportunity to go ahead and detain peaceful activists like this who are on their way to just deliver aid to Gaza. Talk to us about that, because we need to realize that this could potentially be a reality, because these are the words of Ben-Gvir, and if it's the words of Ben-Gvir, it's been rubber stamped by Benjamin Netanyahu.
I mean, absolutely. I think let us be very serious. And alhamdulillah, the activists were detained. If Ben-Gvir is saying he's going to detain the activists, he's going to detain the activists. Unless something radically changes, which states could anticipate, and then exert sufficient pressure to force a change of course. Or they could abandon their citizens to be detained in a settler colonial state, which is renowned for persecution, for unlawful detention, for torture, for unlawful, inhumane acts of state terror. They could either abandon their citizens to that, or they could start thinking about how to preempt this. Number one. Number two, the reason this is happening is because states have failed in their duties as states. And I'm not talking about all states. Obviously, we are in South Africa, which is remarkable in its support for the Palestinian cause. Of course, there's a lot of way to go, and things like sanctions really need to be enforced, but we cannot really compare the complicity of many in the West with a state like South Africa that has been supportive, and that we know, or we hope, we pretty much, it would be very surprising to me if South Africa abandoned its citizens. It would be equally surprising to me if the Israeli state did not really clamp down on South African citizens. So that is something that we need to be aware of. But I think perhaps now that we're seeing this groundswell of activists, and certainly I think what is special about this is that the activists come from all over the world, and here I'm speaking to you from Tunis, not Sicily. The African delegations are leaving from Tunis. Many of the Middle Eastern delegations are leaving from Tunis. And there's something quite special about being here, because it is a kind of critical mass of Global South activists. But perhaps the fact that there are many white Western activists here will finally alert Western states to the fact that there is a genocide ongoing, and will finally alert Western states to the fact that people are detained in inhumane, unspeakable conditions in the settler colony of Israel. And perhaps now we will see a shift. But I don't know. I don't know if it's taken this long to acknowledge even the fact that there's a genocide. I am not sure how to answer that question properly in terms of what we can expect from those who are funding arming, but it is their duty to their citizens and to humanity, really, to not allow this to continue, not only for the activists, but also for Palestinians.
Joe, I've got 3 minutes. The statement warns of dangers which could occur for this Global Sumud Flotilla, taking the 2010 Mavi Marmara massacre of 10 activists, the Conscience, the Madeleine, the Handala. Talk to us about that, because this is something that needs to be, and not just anticipated, but also be well aware of.
Yeah. Look, there's risks. There's major risks. I think it is wise for us to keep a cool head about what this is, and on the one hand anticipate, our job as the legal support boat is to literally track the drones. So that is what, that's what we're expected to do. So I think we will see drone coverage. I think we will likely see detentions. I also think, and I just want to say this, It's the optimism of the will, the optimism of the will, the pessimism of the intellect, as Gramsci says. I think there's also a chance that a flotilla of this magnitude might just move towards, I don't know if breaking the siege is the word, but maybe moving towards starting to inch away at that settler colonial structure. I think the risks are serious. But I think there is strength in numbers, and that is important. And I think to mitigate against these risks, it really is incumbent upon all of us to be supporting not just the flotilla, but the Palestinian cause, because that is why we are doing this. And we also ought to remember that the risks for any of us are dwindle in comparison to what an average Palestinian goes through on a daily basis. And it is my hope that in thinking about these risks, we gain that perspective globally, and that puts an end to the siege and the settler colonial genocide that upholds and is upheld by it.
Joe, always good having you on. Thank you so much for joining us. Much appreciated. Wa alaikum salam.
Thank you so much. So great to be here, and good evening to your guests.
That's Joe Bluen. She is a member of the legal support team for the Global Sumud Flotilla. But we're going to continue the conversation on Gaza. I'm going to be speaking to Dr. Shir Heva. We're asking the question, why? Why does Benjamin Netanyahu want to continue the genocide in Gaza? Is it, of course, to maintain his political standing within Israel, or is it, as he has said on various occasions, the destruction of the so-called Amalek that he wants to go ahead and deliver? That conversation will begin after this break. Do stay tuned.